Hi, my name is Natalie Miller.
I'm Hannah Kamek.
Oh, is it me? I'm Cambria Reeves.
I'm Rebecca Jackson. All right, and we are doing our discussion on the CRC reactions. All right, so the first question is, what were your impressions of the CRC article and video by the United Nations? What about the article and the videos on parental rights? Anybody want to go first?
I'll go first. Um, I don't know if you guys felt the same way, but I kind of had a hard time figuring out what was going on at first. Not figuring out what was going on, but just trying to figure out what was the truth, kind of thing. Um, it helped to watch the first video, the one that was about an hour long, about the lady that came to BYU, Idaho. She kind of explained how the United Nations worked a little bit before, so that helped kind of set the stage. But then it makes it seem so good on the UNICEF side, and then on the other side, they're like, this is taking away your parental rights, and this is a really bad thing. So it's kind of like, at first I was kind of torn, like I didn't know what I thought. So does anyone else feel the same way?
Um, I am kind of like you. Well, it was kind of like, I mean, you look at the website, the CRC website, and then you look at, like, I was reading some of their stuff. I couldn't get some of the links to open, like the articles of what actually is posted and stuff, but um, it sounds so good. Like, oh, they really have like our children's best interests and stuff. But then when you look at the parental rights website and see the videos, it's suddenly like, oh, wait a second, you're really taking away a lot of our rights. And so then it is kind of like, wait, that's not neat. And I don't know. So, I mean, I'm definitely siding with the parental rights, but the CRC really does make it look good. And I can see why, if you go to the United Nations and you hear them talking about this, how you would kind of fall for it if you don't understand it, which I still kind of don't. But, it sounds so good, but taking away rights of the parents isn't good either.
I agree with both of you. Kind of like what I really thought of was the two videos we watched last week, where like one was really persuasive and one wasn't so persuasive. But in this case, you see one and you're like, oh my gosh, this is great! Like, this is awesome. My kid's future is going to be awesome. And then you go to the parental rights video and you're like, oh my gosh, what is this? But one thing in the CRC video that they said is to just make sure you research everything yourself. Like, be persuaded on your own account. And that's what I was like, because I think because both sides are going to really try to pull you in, like they did. But now that you know both sides, you're like, oh, now I have to make an educated decision.
Yeah, when I was reading them and watching the videos, I'm like all for the parental rights. And when I was talking to my husband about it, my husband works with kids every day and lower income families, and he's like, "This is awesome because it's going to protect these kids that have all these deadbeat parents," which I do see like the benefits of that, and especially in all these other countries that they didn't have sex trafficking laws and they didn't have child protection laws, but here in the U.S. we already have all those in place, and so I can see it getting taken advantage here, as in other countries they kind of really needed somebody to step up and speak for the children there.
I like that, Rebecca, just what you said really quick. Because I kind of felt that way when I was reading and watching the videos. I was just kind of like, okay, it's black and white. Like, for some reason, I just feeling like, okay, of course, there's some middle ground. It's not like, okay, we're all for parents' rights and we're all for children rights. It's like, I appreciate you saying, okay, for some people it's probably really great, and some people it's probably like infringing on your personal beliefs and stuff. So I don't know. I never really came to figure out where my balance was, but I appreciate you saying that.
All right, the next question is, if you're from, I am assuming you guys are all from the U.S., because if you're not, or if you're from the U.S. or Somalia where the CRC has not been ratified, research another country to document the positive and negative effects and relate how they could benefit or hurt your country with a future CRC ratification. So when I was trying to look it up, I couldn't find anything about a certain country, but I know with the UNICEF video and all the work that has been done, that it has provided a lot of good. So I'm still not. I don't know where I lie on which one to go with.
I'll go if you guys don't mind. One thing that I took away from the parental rights video is they said that treaties trump all state laws, and all family-related things are laws. So once the treaty goes into place, the family laws are completely wiped out. We have to follow this. So they said there's nothing for us to gain because we already have these laws, but there's everything to lose. We would lose our parental rights. So I do agree with Rebecca. I think that UNICEF and United Nations have done great things for other countries, but for countries like the United States, we don't need that. I mean, there are parents out there that have very poor parenting skills and shouldn't even be parents. But in those cases, that can affect. That's like speaking generally, like, well, because there's 10 bad parents in a group of 50, we're gonna make you guys all follow the same rule.
Well, and to go along with that, there's already all these laws in place to protect children from those bad parenting, and they have to have proof of harm to the children to be able to investigate or do whatever they do to help the children. But I feel like if the CRC was ratified, that they would be able just to, your kid doesn't like whatever you said that day, and they would be able to intervene.
So I didn't get the chance to look up any research articles or anything, but so the question is kind of saying, like, how could it benefit or hurt your country if they were to apply that to the United States, or to ratify it in our country? And I think there's so many, kind of like what Rebecca said already, like there's social services for people whose children need it, or there's so many programs that kind of defend the family. I mean, there's always more that can be done, but with sexual abuse and with physical abuse, it seems like there's a lot of education happening already. So I feel like if we were to ratify this document in our country, it would do more harm than good, I guess. It would just kind of take away a lot of rights, and it wouldn't do enough good for. I just don't see the benefit of it at all. Like, maybe if there was more great things that came from it, that would be good. But it just seems like it would just hurt our country.
I actually looked up Canada because I was like, well, they're close and they're pretty, like I thought a third world country might have different pros and cons than we would. So I looked up Canada, and I honestly couldn't find any cons. I mean, I'm sure somewhere in the list of websites, but I actually found a website called Common Questions about child rights, and it was really interesting to read through because it was, I don't know, it was it was just interesting because it really did separate the parent from the child. And it just talked about, like, what are the parents supposed to do since the children have all these rights? And it was like, you still should, ask the kids what they're learning about in school. And it had things that were good, but the way it was worded, it almost sounded like parents are suddenly taking a back seat to parenting because the children have all these rights. And it talked about, should children still have responsibilities at home? And it talked about how parents need to, yes, let's have them work in the home, but they still have a right to leisure and rest and this and that. And it really gives the children a lot of rights to say, like, oh, I don't want to do that. Like, I suddenly think parents would be walking on eggshells a lot with the government, with the rules. But everything sounded good. Like, I thought, oh, it's everything that we believe in. We think that children should have rights and be respected and have all of these things, and parents should be involved in schooling. But it suddenly made it sound like, be involved, but take a back seat because they are independent people and they aren't in your control anymore. I don't know. So it was kind of interesting to me.
So something on that though, because I did some research. I didn't get very far, but I found myself questioning. My niece and my nephew hate to go to school. My sister takes them and drops them off, and it is a huge production. Huge. So if these children had rights, would they not have to go to school? Which would eventually turn... I mean, who wants to go to school? Nobody. Who doesn't want to take a test? You are soon going to be giving all these children these rights when... What are you going to do? Like, what rights do you have when the child says, you know what, no, I don't want to go to school for the whole year? You can't do anything. You can't step in because it's their right. It's their freedom of association, their freedom of expression. So where is this country going to go if none of those kids want to go to school?
I think another thing to go along with that is that they have all these rights, and there aren't consequences to go with it. One thing that I was reading was, like, if someone committed a murder at 17 years old, 11 months, and 29 days, they wouldn't be able to get life in prison because they're still a child and they don't fall under the adult rights. They have their child rights, and so I think it would, like, it sounds great right now, but I think once it started rolling, it would just evolve into more and more problems. And going on the school thing, I have a friend who actually just got turned into social services because her child missed 6 days of school. She excused him, and he had a doctor's note, but he missed too many days of school, so they turned her in. And she's like, fine, have them come to my house, and I'll tell them that I'm a good mom, and I was taking care of my child, and they have so many other things to worry about. And it's things like that. They have other things that they need to worry about. Children that are being neglected and abused, and they are not taking care of those issues. They're taking care of minor issues with parents that are trying their best.
I just would add to that too, like, do we really want our government to be, like, in all the little details? I just feel like there's kind of like what Rebecca said, like, is there bigger things than children's rights? I don't know. It's kind of like, it's great for those people who have child labor laws and they have sex slavery, but for here it just seems like it's just one more thing that we don't really need the government to get involved in. But that's my opinion.
So the next question is, how did Kelly's presentation help you understand the ecological approach to family advocacy?
I'll start. Something that I liked about her presentation is that she had a lot of relatable stories, and when they didn't work out as she hoped, she explained what she then did. So it was kind of like, although I was kind of lost, like, I would be like, oh, the story of abduction or whatever. She was like, well, I had to show more facts. I had to show more data. I had to prove that I knew that this was actually happening. And so, not that it tells me anything about the um, ecological approach to family advocacy. I just think that it shows me that anything with family, you are going to get hooked with more personal stories, more data, and more research. I don't know. That's what I felt like.
I thought that the ecological approach, like I thought she took things from, like she's an advocate on all levels, like on the microsystem and the like all the way up to the macro system. Like I don't know, and I guess this kind of answers some of the other ones, but I thought it's like for me, I feel like, oh, I'm a great advocate in my house to my kids, like telling them like, hey, we choose the right and we don't look at pornography, but like I feel a little more intimidated on like a grand scale, and I felt like she did such a good job at like she's teaching her kids, and then she's reaching out to her local leaders. She's speaking up in the schools, and then she's also going to the United Nations. Like she is taking this approach to everything. Like she's advocating for the family on every level that you can, and I thought that was really inspiring and intimidating all at once.
I would just echo what Cambria said. I thought she did a great job of not just doing it in her home, or even just in her little community. She like reached out. She's like, I'm not gonna just be an advocate for my neighbors and I'm gonna be an advocate for all families. And so that was kind of like Cambria said, it's just like a testimony to me that, okay, we know the truth. It's kind of like sharing the gospel a little bit too, like standing up for the family. It's important to just reach all of the ecological model, not just in your home, even though that really is important too.
I agree with all of you, and I don't really have much to add to that. The last question is, well, it's two of them. Which system or level do you think personally feel would be the most difficult to advocate for and why, and the most important to advocate for and why? The most difficult, obviously, I think would be the macro system. I don't have any connections to the United Nations or to big government people. And what do I think is the most important? I don't know, that's a tough one. I would almost have to say the microsystem, because when you're advocating for your family and in the community, then you are building a stronger foundation. They're all important, but I think that's what I'd have to go with.
For me, I think I would agree with you, but at the same time, when I think about it, I would also say that the most difficult and the easiest and most important would be the microsystem, only because in communities, a lot of people feel like they're the black sheep of the community because they're Mormon or they're Christian, or they feel these feelings of neglect, I guess, from their community members because of religious views or whatever. And so for them to like go to a PTA meeting, just a little backstory, the Las Vegas Clark County School District wants to start teaching sex ed to kindergartners, using the 6th grade manual to teach sex ed to. So yes, all these parents think that it's ridiculous. So there's like obviously a lot of parents advocating for that to get it off the ballot and all this stuff. But what if it was something else, like saying prayers in school, or saying, would you be comfortable enough, even though you know that all these people are like, oh, she's Mormon, of course she's going to stand up there. Like, would you feel more? It would be, I think, once you get past your community members then you would be able to be more comfortable and say, I could go to the United Nations. Like, I faced my peers and I was able to convince them that this is what I think. So I think it would be the most difficult and the most influential. Anyways.
Um, you know, that's a good point because I really like in my mind I was thinking, oh, the macro system would be hard and intimidating. I think just because it's big. But the microsystem, when I think of microsystem, I guess a lot of times I do think in my home, like I'm teaching, but really it is hard to go to the schools and to your neighborhood, kind of, because I don't know, for me, I kind of walk this line of like, oh, I don't want to offend people or, and so, but I also want I want to stand up for the family. And so I do think that the microsystem can be difficult, even though that's the place I want the most protected and the advocacy to really make a difference and be most influential. So basically, I think any level is hard, but it's all really important, but especially around my children and around my home.
So I'm kind of opinionated and loud. So my family, I feel like my family would already kind of know what I stand for. And so that one's actually not as difficult for me because I don't know if I'm just really blunt or if I'm just rude. I don't know. It seems like I like doing workshops and I like telling people around me what's important and stuff. So for me, the hardest to advocate for would be the macro system, or the biggest one. I think that's the macro system, because there's so many people who don't agree with you too. I think that would make it way harder too, because kind of your friends and the people that you live near tend to kind of have your same views. But if you're trying to convince these people who have all these different backgrounds that family is important and marriage is important, that would be really difficult because it's just two different viewpoints. I think that would be the most difficult, and I think probably the most important would be microsystem, kind of how Rebecca said, where you got to start in the home, you got to start somewhere, but then also it's important to branch out because you can't really make a difference. I mean, it's hard to make a difference if you just stay in your home and just say, okay, we don't do that. So that's kind of what I think.
Well, awesome. I think that's all the questions. And who is doing the summary again? Perfect.
Okay, so for our summary, we discussed our impressions of the CRC and the parental rights. And we were just saying that the CRC, it looks impressive when you first look at it and they make it sound good. And for some countries, it might be good. It might be better than the laws that they had. But the parental rights looks good because it's helping parents maintain their rights, the rights of parenting. And so we kind of talked about that someone had mentioned that it's important for us to research both sides and become very familiar with both sides so we can make a really educated decision. And then we talked about how with living in the United States, we already have a lot of rights that protect children and protect families, and so we may not have a lot to gain, but we would have a lot to lose. And so there are countries that could benefit for the people that have slavery, children's slavery, and all those, and child labor laws. Like they could be protected from that. So we can see why some countries might benefit from it. But for us, our children have rights, and so giving them more rights, we kind of went, wait, there's rights, but where are the consequences for the children? And it would just take away rights from the family and give more control to the government. And it was mentioned that this treaty, if it was ratified, it would trump all government. So all the rights and parental rights would be trumped by this treaty. When we were talking about Kelly's presentation, we felt like she was an advocate on all levels of the ecological model, and she speaks for the family on every level and everywhere that she can. So for us, kind of going off her inspiration, to advocate, we felt like probably the hardest system would be the macro system, because you're meeting people with different viewpoints and different backgrounds, and you're trying to teach them about your views. But the most influential probably would be the microsystem, because we are wanting to protect our children here, and that's directly influencing us. So we want to make the biggest impact in our microsystem and kind of move up the line, I guess. So, but for sure, probably the macro system would be the most intimidating to approach. So I guess that's our summary. Does anyone have anything else to add? Right.
Thanks, ladies.
Thank you, Cambria.